All right, how's everyone doing? So, I did a video a while back on 1045 steel. Talked about the type of steel it is, what it's good for, and if it's a good steel to use for swords. And yeah, it is a good steel for swords, especially for beginners if you don't have a lot of money, because now being able to get 1045 blades has gotten really inexpensive. Okay, you're limited. You cut light to medium targets with it, so I wouldn't go past medium targets. All right, but is 1060 any good? And I always recommend, if you're a beginner, to get a 1060 or a 9260 steel blade. This is another type of an inexpensive type of steel that you can get. This is a custom job done, 3-4 years ago from Swords of Northshire. And this is a 1060 blade. You can tell that this one's tapered a lot. I kind of like that. But it's a 1060 blade. It's light. You hear that swish sound. It is a folded blade. It's not differentially hardened. Can you differentially harden 1060? Yes, you can. 1065 is a little bit better because, and I'll tell you why. With 1060, you can only differentially harden it. What's the best word I can use? With a very simple hamon. Okay. You can't do like a choji hamon on it. It gets too complicated because you can wind up heat treating it too much and then it's going to crack and break. So it's not ideal to do that. Just like a regular pattern, like this is, like I said, this is just brushed on. We decided to just have that done. But that wave line you see, you know, sporadic, that's about what you can have done on a 1060, which still isn't bad. So yeah, you can differentially harden 1060 steel. Just don't expect to have an elaborate hamon on it. Now, what's 1060 good for cutting wise? 1060 is actually good for medium to hard target. Can 1060 cut bamboo? Yes, actually it can. But like with all swords, you cannot put a razor's edge to it. Not even 1095 or T10 should you put a razor's edge to it if you're going to cut bamboo. Because if your edge alignment is off, you're going to chip it out. But yes, 1060 can cut bamboo. If you're going to cut bamboo with 1060, I recommend having one with a lot of niku, basically meat in the blade. And you'll know if it has it because it looks like an apple seed. That is the requirement for a heavy cutter. And how some of these other sword companies are classifying light cutters to medium cutters to heavy cutters, I'm not sure because I don't have like 3 samples from these other companies that are saying this stuff. Because a medium cutter has meat built into the blade. And when I mean meat built into the blade, yeah, let's get this one right here my wife got me recently for Christmas. It's a black blade. But what we're talking about is meat right in here. This is where the meat is, okay? Not building from the shinogi line to almost the edge, okay? It's where they build the meat up. And if you run your fingers, granted, you should clean your blade afterwards. If you run your fingers over that portion, you should feel a little hump in the blade. Okay, that's a good indication if it's a heavy cutter or if it's not a heavy cutter. That means it's got some meat in it. This one, it's got a little bit put into it. Could this cut bamboo? Potentially. Potentially. Now this one, right here, this guy, could cut bamboo. Whoop, could cut bamboo easily because it has a lot of, we had Niku put in it. And you'll feel a hump. As you're pulling back, you'll feel it, you know. From the near the edge up, you'll feel it kind of like swells up. That's how you can kind of tell if you have a heavy cutter or if a light cutter or a medium cutter, is the shape of the blade itself. So yes, 1060 can cut bamboo. You just have to make sure your edge alignment is good, but you should do that with all swords if you're cutting bamboo. Now, the difference between 1060, 1095, T10 is 1060 will take a bend first. A lot of times it'll, not all the time, but sometimes it will actually spring back unless it's an extremely bad cut. Whereas 1095 T10 doesn't have that flexibility. They're more rigid. So if it takes a bad bend, it's going to stay there. Or depending if it's a dry bamboo, it's going to break it. Okay, because bamboo is like the toughest wood out there when it's, especially if it's dry kilned. Bamboo is dry kilned. The hardness of it succeeds any steel. So you could probably take an S5 and take it to a dry kiln bamboo, and the bamboo is going to win. It just will. The hardness of it is crazy. So, what is 1060 composed of? Okay, so 1060 is composed of a carbon of 0.65, manganese of anywhere between 0.60 to 0.90%. Iron balance is 98%. Phosphorus is 0.030% max, so no more than that. And then sulfur, which is 0.035% max. So if you're wondering the composition of 1060, that's the composition of it. So yeah, that's where the 60 comes from. It has 0.60% carbon, like 1095 has 0.95% carbon. But because 1060 has less carbon in it, it makes it more flexible. Now, it doesn't mean it's a spring steel, because it's not. You'll see sometimes 1060 spring steel, it's really not a spring steel. It's more flexible, more forgiving, in other words, than more rigid blades. That's why it's such a good beginner's sword to use, because it's going to be more forgiving for you if you have a bad cut or your edge alignment is off until you get used to it. And some people, that's all they ever cut with is 1060 blades, which is 100% fine. I have my very first sword my wife got me is from Shasha. And that's like 21 years old. And it's the 1060 blade, and it's perfectly fine. If you don't abuse your blades, it'll be perfectly fine. The only thing wrong with it is one step is loose. That's it. After 21 years. So, I mean, take care of your swords, they'll take care of you. But 1060, excellent blade to use. excellent material, especially if you're, like I said, if you're on a fixed budget, you can get a good 1060, $80 to $100. Sometimes you get a differentially harder one for about $100. Don't have any of those, just these ones. So, and this one right here is not bad at all. I mean, it's actually, it's a nice sword that my wife got me for Christmas. It is a color blade. The drawback to the color blades is when you go to sharpen it, it is going to come off, and when you start cutting with it, it's going to start rubbing off. Now, this one, I need to kind of dress the edge up a little bit more. But that's another nice thing about 1060, and a bad thing. 1060 you can sharpen very, very easily. Okay. The drawback to it is it doesn't hold its edge as long. Not as long as T10 and 1095. Now 1095 is not that difficult to sharpen. This is actually way easier to sharpen than 1095. But then T10 can be a little bit more harder to sharpen because of the tungsten. So if you're new to sharpening, especially swords, a 1060 is a great way to practice because it's so easy to get an edge on it. So, yeah, that's the pros and cons to having a 1060 blade. You can sharpen it very easily and get a very keen edge on it, but that edge is not going to last you as long as a higher grade steel like 1095 or T10. That's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. So if you're kind of like on the fence about getting a 1060 blade, whether it's good or it's not or whatever, perfectly fine. Great starter blades. Like I said, some people, that's all they ever cut with is 1060 because they like them, because they're more forgiving. And like I said, if you chip out a 1060, like I said, it's so easy to sharpen them. It's way easier to take a chip out, you know, to fix it. So, but anyways, hopefully you guys found this informative. Hopefully helped anybody who was thinking about getting one that was 1060. You know, whether or not it's good to cut with. You just have to be more mindful if you're cutting heavy stuff, that your edge alignment is more on spot with it. But you should be that way even if you're using a 1095 or T10 blade. But other than that, yeah, they're great for medium to heavy cutting, depending on how the blade is designed. You know, whether or not it's got Niku in it or not, or is vice versa. And have fun out there cutting with them. We'll see you all later.